17. River monsters versus resort visitors. A group of vacationers were viciously attacked by piranhas in May of 2023 while playing in a stream in Brazil's Taruma-Açu region. At least 8 people were injured in the feeding frenzy, which was unusual despite the piranha's reputation for being a fierce, flesh-eating predator. Piranhas have one of the strongest bites of any bony fish, rivaling that of a great white shark, and their teeth are razor sharp. But it's not in their nature to attack humans because they usually feed on other creatures. If they were inclined to feed on human flesh, there would be a lot more attacks in the Amazon. Following the incident in Taruma-Açu, experts speculated that the fish had gotten used to people throwing food into the river from a nearby restaurant. They believe that one of the piranhas mistook the bathers for the food it was used to receiving from tourists, and that the rest of the fish went wild once they sensed blood in the water. While piranha attacks on humans aren't the norm, a number of serious encounters have occurred in recent years. Over 100 people were injured in a string of attacks in 2011, and at least a handful of attack victims have died from their injuries since then. During a week-long spate of attacks in Paraguay in early 2022, 4 swimmers were found dead and covered in piranha bites. At least one victim was missing body parts, and over a dozen other people were injured by piranhas during that same period. Perhaps the moral of the story is that when you enter the water, you do so at your own risk. In the unlikely event that a piranha attack does happen, experts recommend getting out of the water as quickly as possible and warning everyone around you to do the same. 16. Australian teen versus strange sea creatures. An Australian teenager named Sam Canizay was dipping his feet into the water at Dendy Street Beach in Melbourne in 2017, when his legs were covered in what looked like sand at first glance. He tried brushing it off, but soon realized that he was bleeding. Emergency room staff members were initially puzzled about the cause of his condition, but they eventually identified a flesh-eating sand flea, commonly known as sea lice, as the culprit. Sand flea bites are common, but sea lice don't typically attack humans en masse, according to marine biologist Dr. Jennifer Walker-Smith. She told ABC Australia that Sam may have unknowingly agitated a group that was feeding. Thankfully, though, sea lice don't cause any lasting damage to humans, and Sam was fine in the end. Sea lice actually do a lot of good for the ocean, according to Walker-Smith, who said that the sea would be full of dead fish and birds without the existence of sea lice. She reassured the public that Sam's experience was an unusual one-off incident that most likely resulted from bad luck, standing still, and the frigid water temperature, which somewhat numbed his legs and made the attack less noticeable at first. 15. Florida man meets rabid otter. 74-year-old Joseph Scalione was feeding the ducks at a pond near his house in Jupiter, Florida one day in September 2023 when the birds suddenly flew away. Then, after looking up to check for a hawk and not seeing one, Scalione looked toward the pond and saw the head of a small brown animal sticking out of the water. It was an otter, and it attacked Scalione before he could close his gate and reach safety. The creature bit his legs and arms 41 times and latched onto his hand for 5 minutes. When Scalione felt the otter relax its jaw, he yanked it away from his hand and threw it as far as he could, then ran to safety. The otter proceeded to attack a nearby couple and a dog, before a quick-thinking resident trapped it in their recycle bin. During his visit to the emergency room, Scalione received over 120 rabies vaccine shots in his wound, along with follow-up shots over the following weeks. He told USA Today that hospital staff members were shocked to learn that his injuries were caused by an otter. But right away, Scalione could tell that the animal was sick when he noticed the dazed look in its eyes. And it's a good thing that Scalione received treatment right away, because the otter tested positive for rabies. After being captured, it was baring its teeth at people and gnawing at the metal of its cage. Unfortunately, rabies is incurable, and the only appropriate thing to do in a situation like this is to put down the animal for the sake of public safety. 14. Deadly bee barrages. 59-year-old Michael Alford was swarmed by bees while doing yard work outside his Kentucky home in September 2023. He unknowingly triggered the attack by moving a bag of potting soil without realizing that bees were nesting inside of it. Family members attempted CPR while waiting for paramedics to arrive, and the efforts to save Alford's life continued in the ambulance and emergency room. But unfortunately, they were unsuccessful, and Alford died from his injuries. It's unclear how many times he was stung, though, or if he was allergic to bees. Just months earlier, several bus passengers were stung to death in Nicaragua by a swarm of crazed bees. During an hour-long journey in the country's northwestern region, the bus crashed into a ravine and struck several hives. All 45 people on the bus survived the initial 145-foot plunge down the ravine, but 6 passengers succumbed to bee stings. The U.S. Department of Agriculture says that most people can withstand 10 bee stings for every pound of body weight. According to these guidelines, the average adult can survive 1,100 or more stings. However, a 20-year-old Ohio man named Austin Bellamy survived multiple times that amount, when he was stung at least 20,000 times during the fall of 2022. The young man was cutting a tree branch in the village of Ripley, Ohio, when he accidentally cut into a bee's nest. Bellamy tried lowering himself to the ground, but was unable to. So he began yelling for help. Those who tried to help were also attacked, stopping them from climbing a ladder and helping Austin down from his harness. Responding paramedics cut Bellamy down and rushed him to the hospital, where doctors put him in a medically induced coma to give him the best chance of survival. He miraculously pulled through with the expectation of making a full recovery. But the road to healing was tough. More than 2 months after the attack, Bellamy still had bee venom in his system, and he was expecting it to take another 6 months or more to clear out of his body completely. He told local station Fox 19 that he also continued to struggle with emotional trauma from the experience. 13. Boat sinking killer whales. While passing through the Strait of Gibraltar in October 2023, a yacht called the Crazy Mama 2 was attacked by a pod of killer whales. Owned by the Polish tour company Musky, the boat was under siege for nearly an hour as the orcas rammed into its steering fin. Meanwhile, the crew tried to bring the vessel to port with help from the Moroccan Navy. However, the boat sank near the entrance to the port of Tanger Med, but thankfully nobody was hurt. The incident came amid a troubling increase in orca attacks on boats off the coasts of Morocco and Spain. This rise in whale violence toward humans began in May 2020, when killer whales sank 3 boats after the matriarch of their pod was injured in a collision with a ship. Her behavior became noticeably more aggressive after that, and her calves were seen ramming a boat and mimicking their mother's behavior in several attacks. The troubling trend has caused experts to suspect that orcas are capable of holding grudges, harboring a desire for revenge, and passing these tendencies on to their offspring. Witnesses have described similar attack methods, with the whales typically approaching behind and ramming a boat's rudder or hull. Once they've managed to stop the boat, the attacking party loses interest and disengages. Marine biologist Alfredo Lopez Fernandez told Live Science that experts don't believe adult whales are purposely teaching their calves to attack boats, but that the young pod members are learning to do so by imitating their elders. And even with the uptick in incidents in the region, the vast majority of boats still pass through without issues. But the changes in behavior are significant enough for experts to explore further, especially as the new trend toward violence continues. 12. Slaughterhouse pig gets revenge. A pig was awaiting death at the Shangshui Slaughterhouse in Hong Kong in early 2023 when it turned the tables and attacked the 61-year-old worker who was about to kill it. After being shocked with a stun gun, the animal regained consciousness and charged at the employee, knocking a 15-inch meat cleaver out of his hand and onto his foot. Known only as Kai, the worker was found bleeding profusely by one of his colleagues, and sadly, he died from his injuries at a nearby hospital. Authorities never revealed Kai's cause of death, but when the story broke, speculation pointed toward blood loss as a major factor. It's also unclear whether the rogue pig was escaped or if it was captured and turned into someone's next meal. Company and local officials vowed to investigate the incident to determine if any work safety laws were violated and to take any necessary corrective action. 11. Crocodile death grip. During her shift at a palm oil plantation in Indonesia's West Kalimantan province in 2023, 38-year-old Falmira de Jesus stopped at a stream to gather some water. But seemingly out of nowhere, a crocodile lunged at the woman, clamped its jaws down on her, and dragged her into the stream. Harrowing footage of the attack showed de Jesus up to her neck in the water, while the crocodile remained latched onto her beneath the surface. She fought the giant reptile with all her strength, but she couldn't ward it off on her own. De Jesus began rapidly losing strength and struggling to keep her head above water. But the crocodile wouldn't let go of her. She languished in the stream for 90 minutes as her coworkers looked on helplessly, too afraid to step in themselves, but also not wanting to let the woman die. Rescuers finally arrived and freed de Jesus from the crocodile's grip. She was rushed to the hospital, where she received treatment for deep puncture wounds to her arm, thigh, and lower leg. De Jesus was lucky to survive. Crocodiles are known to kill their prey by dragging them underwater and drowning them, and it seems like that's what the attacking reptile was trying to do to her. In the aftermath of the incident, authorities reminded members of the public to keep a close eye out for crocodiles, especially because the creatures seem to be living in closer proximity to humans in recent years. Experts blame several factors for this, including habitat loss pushing crocodiles further inland toward human-occupied areas, and the shared use of the country's rivers and streams. 10. Jaguar attacks in Brazil. In August 2023, a 40-year-old Brazilian farm worker escaped a vicious jaguar attack thanks to his exploding cell phone. The ordeal began when he went to investigate a disturbance among his herding dogs at a ranch in the country's Paiguas region. He discovered that the disturbance was a jaguar and quickly became the focus of the animal's rage. The man's partner tried to fight the big cat off, but with no success, turning them into nothing but a helpless bystander. An opportunity to escape finally came when the jaguar chomped down on the victim's cell phone, causing the device's lithium-ion battery to explode in its face. It was enough to send the jaguar running back into the woods, and emergency responders arrived shortly thereafter. In addition to suffering from a broken arm and bite injuries to his limbs, the man was treated for a second-degree burn to his leg from the exploding phone. Just a few weeks earlier, a jaguar attacked a man's two nephews during a camping trip in Salto Augusto, Brazil. Erivaldo Moraman discovered the big cat trying to maul the boys as he arrived back at their campsite after a morning walk. Without thinking twice, Moraman sprang into action and waved his arms in the air to distract the jaguar from his nephews. The jaguar tackled him to the ground and bit his head, while Moraman grabbed the animal's leg in his attempt to fight it off. At one point, Moraman tried to run, but the jaguar quickly caught up with him and resumed the attack. After finally getting away from the creature, though, the brave but seriously injured uncle focused on getting medical help. He endured a 2-hour boat ride to the nearest airstrip, where he was picked up and taken to a hospital another 3 hours away. Moraman received over 150 stitches to his head wounds, but he lived to tell the tale of how he fought off a jaguar with his bare hands. And if nothing else, he's definitely his nephew's favorite uncle now. 9. California man versus furry critters. Matt Levers was enjoying a swim in Northern California's serene lakes in 2023 when a group of otters began biting his legs and body. He tried to outswim his attackers, but they easily kept pace with him. Luckily though, Leper's wife came to the rescue on her paddleboard and helped get him to shore. And during a subsequent visit to the emergency room, lepers received treatment for around 40 puncture wounds. Otter attacks on humans are extremely unusual. In the 30 years that Leopard has been vacationing and swimming at the lake, this was his first violent run-in with the creatures. The incident involving Leopards happened about a year after a previous attack on a swimmer at the same lake, sparking rising concerns about the aquatic mammal's abnormally aggressive behavior. State Fish and Wildlife spokesperson Peter Tira acknowledged that it's rare for otters to attack humans, but pointed out that they are considered a predatory species. At the very least, this means they're willing to defend their territory against a perceived threat, even if it's not in their nature to attack people. Leffers was unsatisfied with this explanation, convinced that the otters who attacked him were trying to kill him and that someone would end up dead. He called for the animal's removal from the lake entirely. Otter attacks on humans seem to be on the rise elsewhere in the United States as well. Just weeks before Leffer's terrifying encounter, a Montana woman named Jen Royce had part of her ear torn off by an otter. She was tubing with two friends on the Jefferson River near Bozeman when the creature attacked the trio. Jen's friends were bitten on their hands and bodies, while Jen's face was viciously clawed. The otter finally swam away when Jen entered shallow water, which enabled her to gain her footing and fight the animal off. After becoming separated during the struggle, the friends reconvened, but by then it was dark and they were all injured and bleeding. Calling for help was difficult due to the remoteness of their location, so the women screamed for an hour until a civilian passerby called 911 for them. Jen was airlifted to the hospital, where she underwent surgery for her facial injuries and received stitches to her head and body. In a social media update, Jen said that she truly thought she was going to die during the attack, and that she was grateful to be alive. But she undoubtedly has a fear of otters now, a fear that likely never crossed her mind before this incident. 8. Leopard on the loose. At least 15 people in and around the Indian town of Jorhat were attacked when a leopard went on a sudden rampage in late 2022. Viral footage showed the big cat leaping over a barbed wire fence, jumping onto a passing van, and ripping some of its trim off before jumping back into the street and continuing along its path of destruction. Forest officer Ranjit Kanwar told The Telegraph that some residents found the leopard roaming around in their courtyards. Several victims needed medical treatment for bite injuries, but thankfully nobody was catastrophically wounded. Wildlife officials tranquilized the leopard after a 2-day search and took it into their care for further examination of its unusually aggressive behavior. At the time of its capture, authorities believed that it had escaped a nearby nature preserve in search of food. About a month earlier, a similar enraged leopard rampaged through a village in Karnataka's Mysore district. A cell phone video captured the moment the cat tried lunging at some people who were taking refuge on a rooftop, only to realize it couldn't get to them. So it targeted a person on a motorcycle instead, prompting the driver to speed up in an effort to outrun the crazed animal. The leopard then tackled a forest ranger who'd thrown a rock at it to try to distract it. By the time law enforcement arrived at the scene, the leopard had fled into the forest. A clip that surfaced online shortly after the first video appeared claimed to show villagers tackling the leopard and wrestling it with their bare hands. Thankfully, though, forest officials caught the injured leopard and removed it from the scene. Leopards aren't instinctively programmed to attack humans. Like any animal, they won't hesitate to defend themselves when they feel threatened. And it certainly seems possible that there are rogue leopards who exhibit unprovoked violence toward people for reasons that experts haven't figured out yet, especially since these types of encounters have increased in frequency in recent years. One possible explanation for the rise in hostile encounters between leopards and humans is the simple fact that the two are living in closer proximity to one another. As India's human population boom enters its 5th decade, these competitions for space will only continue. And unfortunately, the violence between animals and humans will also continue to rise. 7. Delivery drivers brush with death. An Amazon delivery driver was just doing her job when she set a package on the front step of a home in Palm City, Florida. But doing her job caused her to be bitten by a giant rattlesnake in September 2023. 21-year-old Monet Robinson didn't notice the nearly 5-foot-long, venomous reptile coiled up near the front door until it bit her in the back of the leg. The bite immediately caused her to become sick, so she called for help. The creature in question was identified as an eastern diamondback rattlesnake. It's the largest venomous snake in the United States. Its venom is both potent and administered in large doses with each bite, making it one of the country's most dangerous animals. Emergency responders tracked Robinson's location through her GPS and rushed her to the hospital in serious condition. Meanwhile, the snake continued acting aggressively toward people at the scene. While it's customary to relocate rattlesnakes that are found near people's homes to more remote locations, Martin County Sheriff's Sergeant Brian Tyson decided that the snake that bit Robinson was too dangerous to take any chances with. He later told local station ABC 25 that he didn't want to euthanize the snake, but community safety came first. According to an update from 2 days after the incident, Robinson was awake and talking. And speaking briefly with WPTV from her hospital bed, she said that she was in a lot of pain, but was getting through it with her family's support. First responders credited Robinson's ability to stay calm as one of the reasons she survived. By breathing more slowly and doing everything in her power to prevent her heart rate and blood pressure from rising, she effectively slowed the venom's movement through her body. She's chosen to stay out of the spotlight as she tries her best to move on from the harrowing ordeal. 6. Pig terrorizes Texas family. A family in Kingsland, Texas experienced an unusual home break-in when a 300-pound pig somehow found its way into their house in September 2023. The ordeal began when the black and white spotted pig attacked Wendy Goldstein's daughter in their front yard. It then somehow barged inside the family's mobile home with its mouth foaming and eyeballed its next target. In a 911 call, Goldstein's daughter could be heard saying that a random pig was attacking her grandparents. Goldstein later told Fox 7 Austin that her elderly mother had tried to pin the pig to the floor when she saw it attacking her husband. But the animal easily took control of the situation and got on top of the woman. During the chaos, the pig's owner approached the family in search of his lost livestock. He allegedly threatened to shoot the family if they hurt the pet, prompting Goldstein to wonder out loud during her Fox interview if the owner expected the family to sit there and let the pig maul them. Animal control officers shot the pig with a non-lethal pepper ball, but they were unable to capture it when it ran away. Goldstein later claimed that the intrusive creature returned to her property later on. In most instances, when an animal is found to be aggressive, that animal is put down. But in this case, it's unclear if that step was taken. 5. Snake and hawk shred woman's arm. In a freak accident that occurred in August 2023, a Texas woman was attacked by a hawk and a snake at the same time. 64-year-old Peggy Jones was cutting her grass on a riding mower in Silsbee when a snake fell out of the sky and tightly wrapped itself around her arm. And as she tried to loosen the snake's grip by waving her arm around, a hawk swooped in and began clawing at her extended arm. The bird returned at least 4 times in an attempt to retrieve the snake it had dropped on Peggy, continuing to attack her arm in the process. By the time the hawk finally grabbed the snake and flew off, Peggy's arm was covered in blood. Once she calmed down, she realized that the snake had bruised her arm because of how tightly it wrapped itself around the limb, but that the reptile didn't bite her despite being venomous. The vast majority of her injuries came from the hawk's talons shredding her skin in its attempts to get its dinner back. Some people said that Debbie had terrible luck by happening to be in the exact wrong place and time to be attacked by both a hawk and a venomous snake at the same time. But Debbie said that she felt incredibly lucky to have survived the incident. especially since it wasn't her first encounter with a wild, venomous snake. She'd survived a bite just a few years earlier, making her extra grateful to walk away with relatively minor injuries for a second time. After treating her wounds, Debbie went back outside, got back on her lawnmower, and continued cutting her grass. 4. Plane passengers swarmed by mosquitoes. A Mexico City-bound Volaris Airlines flight was waiting to take off from Guadalajara one afternoon in October 2023 when a swarm of mosquitoes stormed the cabin. Footage captured by passengers showed flight attendants waving their arms in the air and walking down the aisle while spraying bug repellent in every imaginable direction. The flight was delayed for over 2 hours until airline employees got the problem under control, and several crew members were reportedly stung in the process. One passenger later told news outlet El Sol de Leon that the bug spray only seemed to agitate the mosquitoes more. The swarm finally stopped buzzing when the lights were turned off inside the cabin. According to local media reports, the region is ripe for mosquito infestations due to its stagnant water and abundant vegetation. The weather conditions are also attractive to mosquitoes, which explains why this wasn't the first time the insects infiltrated a plane at Guadalajara International Airport. Journalist Juan Manuel Jimenez captured a similar incident on camera in 2019 while waiting for a Volaris flight to take off. Airlines have reportedly said that the problem is beyond their control at times, but that they equip their employees the best they can to deal with it. Preventative measures are also taken, like cutting the airport's grass short and using larvicides. 3. Gruesome grizzly encounter. Canadian couple Jenny Goose and Doug Inglis were experienced campers, hikers, and canoers. The 62-year-olds were also known for being responsible and taking safety precautions while out in the wilderness. But it wasn't enough to stop them from being attacked by a grizzly bear during a trip to Banff National Park in Alberta in September 2023. Doug's uncle, Colin Inglis, told the Calgary Herald that the last message he received from his nephew read, "Bear attack, bad." It came shortly after they sent him a message letting him know that they were late reaching their campsite but doing okay. When Inglis stopped hearing from the pair, he knew something was terribly wrong and called for emergency help. Reaching the couple involved taking a 3-hour helicopter ride, then searching on SUVs. A team of rescuers arrived at the couple's campsite at around 2:00 a.m. to find their mauled bodies lying on the ground near an empty can of bear spray. And sadly, their dog was also dead. The victim's tent was crushed, and their e-readers were left open. Emergency responders also encountered an underweight female bear who they believed was responsible for the attack, and as a result, she was euthanized at the scene. The couple's longtime friend, 77-year-old Ron Tether, told the New York Post that based on their habits, the pair would have stored their food properly. During one of his last conversations with his friends, Doug told him that he'd recently bought animal-proof food storage containers. Knowing this, Tether believes that the bear who attacked Doug and Jenny was specifically after them, rather than their food. Colin Inglis also believes that the bear who attacked them was extremely hungry and intent on killing the victims. Unfortunately, Jenny and Doug's story proves that when it comes to roughing it in the wilderness, you can do all the right things and still end up dead. 2. Beachgoer versus blue-ringed octopus. Australia is notorious for its unique and often terrifying wildlife. It's even home to one of the most toxic creatures, known as the blue-ringed octopus. Named for the bright blue markings they display when threatened, the group encompasses 4 different species that are found in the waters off the country's coast. Most blue-ringed octopi are small enough to fit in a human hand, but they contain a deadly neurotoxin called tetrodotoxin, which can paralyze a human even in tiny amounts, leaving the person fully conscious yet unable to breathe. There is no antidote for it, which means that medical professionals are limited in their ability to help a patient suffering from its effects. In early 2023, a woman in her 30s was bitten in the abdomen twice by a blue-ringed octopus while collecting seashells along a beach near Sydney. One of the creatures fell out of a shell that she picked up and landed on her stomach. But she lucked out and walked away from the ordeal relatively unscathed. She treated her abdominal pain with cold compresses while waiting to be taken to the hospital, where she was monitored for further symptoms. Blue-ringed octopi typically avoid humans and will only bite when they feel provoked. Bites are therefore rare, and deaths are even less frequent. There are only 3 confirmed fatalities from a blue-ringed octopus bite on record, including 2 in Australia and 1 off the coast of Singapore. Some believe that the actual number is higher though, and there have certainly been a number of close calls. One such incident occurred in December 2018 when a fisherman named Mitchell Ogg got hit in the foot by a blue-ringed octopus while pulling a crayfish pot out of the water. The 28-year-old remained as calm as possible while being rushed to the hospital and was happy to announce to his loved ones the next day that he was alive and well. And now for number 1. But if you want to hear even more stories, stay tuned for some extra content that you might have missed. 1. Dog Drowning Kangaroo. Australian martial artist and former police officer Mick Maloney put his training to use one day in the most unusual way in 2023, when a 7-foot kangaroo tried to drown his dog. He was walking along the Murray River in Mildura, Victoria, when he noticed that the canine, Hutchie, was nowhere to be seen. Meanwhile, Maloney's other dogs were avoiding the water and acting strangely quiet. It only took a few seconds before Maloney looked into the river and saw Hutchie being forcefully submerged by the kangaroo. The pup cried out for help as he gasped for air every chance he got. Maloney hit the record button on his cell phone before approaching the kangaroo and ordering it to let go of his dog. The kangaroo ignored the command, so Maloney punched it in the head. Naturally, the creature struck back, knocking Maloney's phone out of his hand. The ensuing struggle remained out of the camera's view, but could be heard happening as Maloney fought to free his dog. Don't worry though, because he eventually retrieved the phone and captured footage of Hutchie safely on the riverbank. The angry kangaroo could also be seen staring bitterly at Maloney as he exited the water. But luckily, both the dog and its owner walked away with only minor injuries. Commenters gave mixed opinions in response to the viral video. Some told Maloney that it was his responsibility to keep his dog safe from wildlife, and that the kangaroo was merely defending itself. Others pointed out how much worse the outcome could have been, especially since kangaroos are extremely strong and have a natural tendency to try drowning their adversary when they feel threatened.
Number 8. It's raining fish. In June of 2015, a strange phenomenon occurred in Fairbanks, Alaska, where fish literally fell from the sky. It's not surprising that a lot of Alaskan locals were a bit freaked out by the whole ordeal. Many were left wondering how something like this could happen, but apparently there was a perfectly reasonable explanation for the falling fish. According to Lamprey Conservation Management, hungry birds were to blame. The same sort of incident was observed in Limerick City, Ireland. A young boy had been waiting in the car for his mother when suddenly an adult lamprey fish fell out of the sky and landed directly on the window of the vehicle. The fish was found alive by the boy's mother when she returned a short while later. This event occurred during lamprey spawning season, which usually takes place between May and July. This fact was also noted in the similar incident that happened in Alaska. The Alaska Department of Fish and Game came out with a statement explaining that the lamprey were likely being pulled from the Chena River, where the fish lay their eggs by hungry birds. Then, as the fish put up a struggle, the birds dropped them mid-flight, causing them to rain down from the sky. Lampreys are known to be hard to catch due to their eel-shaped bodies and odd sucker-like mouths, so it makes sense why the birds would have a hard time carrying them away. This explanation likely put many people at ease. However, it doesn't make fish falling from the sky any less terrifying when you're not expecting it. It's already happened in 2 different locations, so who knows where it may happen next. At number 7, Winnipeg River Musky Attack. Kim and Terry Driver were trying to relax on the beach of the Winnipeg River with a group of their friends one day in July of 2020 when Kim suddenly let out a scream. The woman frantically shouted, "Someone's got my leg," before her arms flew up and she went under the water. Terry and the rest of the group stood there for a moment in disbelief as they had no idea what had just happened. Kim managed to fight her way back to the shore, and her friends quickly went into panic mode when they noticed the damage that was done to the woman's right calf. Her wounds were bleeding heavily and they extended from her ankle all the way to her knee. Luckily, the group included Ontario Provincial Police officers and nurses who were able to administer first aid as soon as possible. In the meantime, Terry hurried to get his truck so he could take Kim to the nearest hospital in Kenora. After the incident, Kim told Global News that the fish attack left her in shock and in horrible pain. She explained that while she was in the chest-deep water, she looked down and saw the fish's head, which sort of resembled an alligator. Then it latched onto her calf and moved her from side to side before pulling her under. The fish that attacked her was identified by several people to be a musky, a member of the pike family. Occasionally, muskies can be attracted to shiny objects like jewelry, but it's unclear why exactly one went after Kim. These types of attacks are extremely rare since muskies don't usually attack humans. However, the fish do have a fairly large mouth and a big set of teeth, so they could definitely do some damage if they wanted to. Unfortunately for Kim, she just happened to get on the bad side of one of these fish. The woman had to undergo plastic surgery in order to repair her lost skin, but the couple didn't let the experience stop them from going to their favorite beach spot. However, Kim will likely opt to stay out of the water during their next visit. Number 6. Giant Spearfish. A 73-year-old woman was stabbed in the groin by a 100-pound sailfish while she was boating off the coast of Florida with two of her friends in the summer of 2022. Catherine Perkins and her two pals, 75-year-old Louis Toth and 77-year-old Dominic Belitza, were trying to reel in the giant fish when the incident took place. The sailfish tried to swim forward while above the water in an attempt to escape capture, and in the process of doing so, it pierced the woman in the groin as she stood on the boat. Apparently, everything happened so fast that Catherine had no time to react. According to Fox 13, Toth and Belitza applied pressure the best they could to the puncture site and called 911 as they headed back to shore. When they finally reached the beach, Catherine was airlifted to HCA Florida Lawnwood Hospital to be treated. Sailfish are very similar to swordfish, and they're recognizable by their long, pointed bills. They're strong fighters and are known to dive deep and pull drag fishing reels in hopes of dislodging fishing hooks. They can grow up to 11 feet long and can weigh upwards of 220 pounds. And on top of all that, sailfish are also some of the fastest fish in the ocean, reaching speeds of up to 70 miles per hour. Catherine seemed to be recovering from the attack on the Thursday following the incident, but her current condition is unknown. Number 5. Fish with human-looking teeth. When most people think of teeth, they rarely imagine them to have big teeth, but beachgoers were absolutely shocked when a fisherman in North Carolina reeled in a fish with a giant smile in August of 2021. Nathan Martin was fishing in Nags Head, a beach town on the state's Outer Banks, when he caught the toothy animal off Jeanette's Pier. The fish appeared to be smiling from ear to ear, exposing its set of oddly human-like teeth. According to experts, the fish was identified to be a sheep's head, and apparently, it's perfectly normal for the species to have teeth like this. Sheep's head are typically silver in color, and they can grow to be almost 30 inches in size. Once these fish are fully grown, they usually gain 3 rows of molars embedded in their upper jaws, as well as 2 rows in their lower jaw. Sheep's heads have a diverse omnivorous diet, and they like to munch on the shells of their tiny prey, and while they may seem dangerous, they pose no threat to humans. David Catania from the California Academy of Sciences told Snopes that unless the fish are being harassed by humans, they don't typically attack. She explained that the only times people are harmed by sheep's head are when they're handling them after reeling one in, since they have sharp dorsal fin spines and strong teeth. After Nathan made his amazing catch, he told Fox News that he planned to mount it on his wall. Number 4. Goonch Catfish, River Monsters. On the popular show River Monsters in 2005 in India, Jeremy Wade reeled in a massive 161-pound goonch catfish that had apparently acquired a taste for human flesh. In the episode, Wade investigated a series of attacks on the local people that all took place in the Kali River. He was able to eliminate crocodiles, turtles, and river dolphins from the suspected list, and then he received a tip from someone claiming that the culprit was a soos. Wade continued his investigation, and after speaking with some of the natives, he found out that the soos is a river beast of legend that resembles an elongated pig. He later discovered that the goonch catfish inspired these myths. In the stories he heard of these attacks, he was told that several people had disappeared after swimming in the river. The first victim was a 17-year-old boy from Nepal who was taken by one of these beasts back in April of 1988 when he entered the water to cool down. After that incident, people continued to go missing periodically. It was later determined that the goonch catfish living in the river developed a taste for human flesh after bodies had started getting dumped into the water after funerals. At first, the fish were just scavengers, but they must have moved on to snatching unsuspecting victims. Wade finally managed to reel in one of these giant fish after several failed attempts. However, his persistence paid off when he caught a massive 5-foot 7-inch goonch catfish weighing 163 pounds. As he was attempting to reel in the creature, he was actually pulled into the water, and he had to swim after it while still clutching his fishing rod. These giant catfish are typically only found in the mountainous regions of India. They're known by many names, including killer catfish and giant devil catfish. These fish can grow to be enormous in size, and they often have aggressive tendencies. While the catfish Wade pulled in may seem impressive, and it is, some of the species can grow over 6 feet in length and weigh upwards of 200 pounds. Number 3. Paraguay Piranha Attacks. In January of 2022, 20 people were injured and another 4 were killed in a series of piranha attacks that took place in Paraguay. As a family was enjoying an outing near the Paraguay River, a 22-year-old man went missing. His relatives reported his disappearance to local law enforcement, who found his body later that day. It was determined that the man was attacked by a school of piranhas that had dragged him under the water. His remains were covered in severe bite marks that were left by the ferocious fish that killed him. In another incident, a 49-year-old man was swimming in the river in the town of Puerto Rosario when he was drowned as a result of a piranha attack. When he was pulled from the river, he was found with bite wounds all over his face. A third man was reported missing the day before, but he was quickly discovered floating down the river. A forensic doctor examined his remains, and his cause of death was asphyxia by submersion. He too had bite marks on his face, and he also had some on his feet. Following these deaths, there were dozens of other reports made by swimmers and bathers who were bitten by piranhas in Itapúa, as well as other beach areas nearby. The rise in attacks was quite unusual given the fact that these fish don't typically go after humans. However, they have been known to get aggressive in times of drought and are characteristically violent during their breeding season between October and March. This kind of behavior is normally only found in male piranhas, but it doesn't usually lead to fatalities. The events in Paraguay seem quite unusual, given what we know about the fish species, although everything seems out of whack since the beginning of 2020, and perhaps the piranhas can sense it. Number 2. Eel Bite. A woman from Annapolis, Maryland was vacationing in Hawaii in 2018 when she was attacked by an eel. On July 29th, 51-year-old Kristen Porter was floating in the water at a popular tourist spot off Kuhio Beach Park when she felt something clamp down on her right foot. She noticed some blood streaming into the water and she immediately began to panic. After a short struggle, Kristen managed to free herself from whatever had taken hold of her foot and yelled for help. Her son and 2 other beachgoers helped her to the shore, and then she was carried to the nearest urgent care facility to treat her wounds. Kristen's doctor examined the bite marks and told her she may have been attacked by a shark. However, a lifeguard that was present during the incident and initially bandaged Kristen's foot didn't agree with this assumption. He said it was more likely that the damage was done by a giant eel, although he acknowledged that if it were the case, it's extremely rare. This does make sense, though, in comparison to the size of the marks left on Kristen's foot, because if they were done by a shark, they'd probably be a whole lot bigger. According to Andrew Rossiter, the Waikiki Aquarium director, eels are particularly active during the nighttime hours, and they prefer rocky areas. He said that Hawaii is home to 5 or 6 eel species that could be responsible for the bite wounds Kristen suffered. While Kristen didn't remember whether she was swimming above the rocks at the time of the attack, she did notice sand and rocks nearby when the incident occurred. Dive master Dr. Kalani Brady, as well as several other experts from the International Shark File in Florida, agreed with Andrew Rossiter by saying that based on the images Kristen shared of her injuries, they too believe that the culprit was a giant eel. When these creatures attack, they typically leave thin lines of gashes, much like the wounds inflicted to Kristen. The whole ordeal left Kristen pretty frightened and in a lot of pain, but she still plans to travel back to Hawaii in the near future. She says that the odds are in her favor and that there's no way she could be bitten twice. And at number 1, leaping silver carp. In 2008, a 15-year-old was left with a broken jaw after being hit in the face by a leaping silver carp while floating down Lake Chilcot, located in southeastern Arkansas. Seth Russell was on a large inner tube that was being towed by a boat when, out of nowhere, a fish jumped out of the water and struck him in the face, leaving him unconscious. According to the boy's mother, Linda Russell, the incident was funny at the moment, but the damage that was done was anything but a laughing matter. The next thing Seth remembered was waking up in the hospital in a lot of pain. The teen's jaw was broken, and he required oral surgery in order to wire several of his teeth back together, and he still experiences pain in his back due to the whiplash he suffered from the high-speed collision. Apparently, it's not uncommon for this sort of thing to happen. Carol Engel from the University of Arkansas at Pine Bluff said that over the years, they've received several calls regarding fish jumping out of Lake Chilcot, causing injuries to unsuspecting victims. She explained to NBC News that silver carps have a jumping problem and that their population has continued to grow in the area. Silver Asian carp were introduced to the United States back in the 1970s. It was catfish farmers who first brought them to the region in hopes that they would remove algae and various other suspended matter from their ponds. But over time, their population grew out of control, and they have since been responsible for several incidents like the one that happened to Seth Russell. They jump high out of the water with virtually no self-awareness and sometimes end up hitting innocent fishermen or swimmers in the process.
Would you rather have your expensive catered food destroyed by a bear during an outdoor party, or get clipped by a territorial bird and need stitches for a non-life-threatening but painful cut? Let us know in the comments down below. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for watching, and we hope to see you in the next one. Bye.